C-Bell wins. We've got another race, so we've got another controversy. And has NASCAR cast its new villain? Let's get into it. Coming up next. What's going on, everybody? Hope you're doing good today. All right, Christopher Bell gets the win here in Atlanta, and it is his 10th win of his career. That puts him 63rd on the list, tied with Sterling Marlin, Donnie Allison, and Clint Boyer, 3 wins away from being tied with Tim Richmond at 13. And just beginning his 6th full-time season in the NASCAR Cup Series, those are pretty big names to already be associated with on the win list. But not only that, it sort of elevates his position within Joe Gibbs Racing itself. Obviously, Denny Hamlin, the elder statesman at JGR, but right now, I would say with his youth, with his prime still in front of him, Christopher Bell has to be the number one guy at JGR, if not Toyota altogether, because if you look at his statistics since his rookie year, where he finished 20th in points, after that, every single season past that, he has made the playoffs, and in his last 3 seasons, he has not finished outside of the top 5 yet, and that streak will continue, of course, this year, at least making the playoffs, because he wins this race, and he will be in the playoffs, so he will at least have a 16th place finish in the points. But not only is he elevating himself on that list, I did like to see after the race that he showed a little bit of his personality, saying that, hey, I'm not one of those drivers that hates super speedways. I love super speedways. So letting out a little bit of the personality. He had sort of been more buttoned up until recently. So now he's starting to just get out there and put the emotion out there even more, which is especially important for a guy that really just does not get talked about enough. All he does is go out there and do a great job. He's a great race car driver, gets a bunch of wins, but nobody ever really talks about him. And unfortunately, even though he won this race, there's going to be a controversy that once again overshadows a Christopher Bell win. So I wanted to start off this episode by, giving props to Christopher Bell for getting the win. But unfortunately, like I said, there was a green-white checkered controversy. And with only the 2nd race this year, we've already had 3 yellow controversies, at least that I can remember off the top of my head, possibly 4. Depending on how you want to count the Gatorade duels, do you count that as a race or do you not count that as a race? But you got the Daytona 500 where some people were upset that it ran all the way. They said the caution should have been thrown. Really not as big a deal there because, William Byron would have won that race no matter when the caution came or if they raced back to the line. But of course, in the Gatorade duels, you also had the Eric Jones versus Austin Cindric, where they thought that they should have raced back to the line, and a lot of people believed, including Eric Jones himself, that he should have won that race. But NASCAR decided to throw the caution early there. Then this weekend, in the Xfinity Series race, NASCAR let them race back to the checkered flag when a lot of people were arguing that they should have thrown the caution. And then you get to the Cup Series race, and we get, again, yet another controversy where NASCAR throws the caution, and some people think that it should have ran to the end. Some people said NASCAR made the right call. It just really depends on who you ask. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend to get up in arms about this, because this has been, I guess it's the hot topic of this week, but this has been a thing that has gone on for a long time in NASCAR. They're just consistently inconsistent. So I don't get too fired up about the cautions anymore, because I know that at any point in a race, it could be a caution, it could not be a caution, because this is just a pattern that NASCAR has had for a long period of time. And just to be totally honest, even worse news for everybody, I'm completely over the green-white checkers. I never really wanted them to begin with. I don't understand where they really add anything to the value of the race. I have no problem with the races ending at the scheduled distance under caution. Like, if you couldn't finish the race under the green, tough tomato. Like, you just got to stop wrecking at the end of these races. So the only way, in my opinion, to keep things consistent and to keep things always basically the same, or at least make an attempt to keep them even for everybody, is to end the races under caution. That way you don't get all these green-white checkers, where we saw that race last year that had like 5 or 6 green-white checkered finishes and things like that, and it ended up being somebody 16th. I think that was the race Joey Logano won. Somebody like 15th or 16th back ends up winning the race because you had so many green-white checkers. But even when you end the races under caution, there could still be some inconsistency from NASCAR on when they throw the yellow, when they don't throw the yellows. That's still not a 100% guaranteed fix for it. So at the end of the day, somehow, some way, NASCAR just needs to figure out to be more consistent with how they throw cautions, to be totally honest. Now, Denny Hamlin and Josh Berry getting together to cause that caution wasn't even the only controversy of this race, because I think also what's going to overshadow the Christopher Bell win is going to be all the chatter about Carson Hocevar, who you saw after the race. You saw several drivers going down there to talk to Carson Hocevar about how he drove during the race. You heard a lot of radio chatter, specifically Kyle Busch early in the race was complaining about the way the 77 was driving. And then, of course, Blaney with the spin there where the bumpers didn't line up. The more egregious one of Carson Hocevar's actions, Ryan Blaney's radio as well, complaining about how the 77 drove. And this really reminded me of the season a few seasons ago where Ross Chastain became public enemy number one. Everybody was sort of talking about him. He was the bad guy. And what's not going to help Carson Hocevar in this situation is, even though him and Ross Chastain I feel like are friends, and I don't think that conversation was necessarily ugly or nasty, I don't think a lot of Ross Chastain fans are going to see it that way. So you got a Ross Chastain fan base that's probably not going to be liking you. You've got the Kyle Busch fan base that's not going to be liking you right now, and you've got the Ryan Blaney fan base that also is not going to be liking you. Complicate that matter with the fact that a few seasons ago, or even last season, I can't remember when exactly all this started, but Door Bumper Clear, under its original format, original hosts, they were constantly talking about how aggressive Carson Hocevar drove and how they didn't like his style of driving as well. So you've got this big confluence of things sort of adding up into one, perfect storm, to where Carson Hocevar quite possibly has now taken that crown from Ross Chastain as the most aggressive driver in the Cup Series. And at the end of the day, you're either going to like aggressive drivers or you're going to not like aggressive drivers. So it's up to the, preference of the person watching the race. But to his credit, Carson Hocevar did address all of this, so let's see what he had to say. This from Toby Christie. Hocevar says while he has some things to clean up, he's here to win races, not build boy bands, express love for others, or play on playgrounds together. And that sentiment right there, I could not agree with more. These drivers will repeatedly do the same things that they complain about to other drivers. Carson Hocevar is no different, but all the drivers complaining about him, you've seen them in situations as well do the exact same thing that Carson Hocevar is doing. But when it gets done to them, they have an issue with it. So it's one of those things. You're a race car driver. Maybe when you retire, you can be friends with other race car drivers, but this buddy feel-good stuff in the garage area, it's all fake for the most part, especially when you strap the belts on, put the helmet on, and get going. So you can't really worry about people not liking you, because you're going to have to get out there, especially with this car, with this package, with this format, and drive aggressively, because it is so hard to get separation with essentially what is a kit car. And also, not for nothing, I mentioned it on the Daytona episode, but the reason for a lot of the green-white checkers and the controversy at tracks like this is the car itself, this particular package. Now, as long as NASCAR likes this package, this is what we're going to see at super speedways. There's just not going to be enough separation, so you're going to get cautions like this, which are going to lead to controversies with when the caution comes out, the green-white checkers and all that. So with this particular package, until NASCAR deems this something that they don't want to see, this is what we will be watching at super speedways going forward. All right, a lot to unpack there, but let's get to the top 10 and who had a good race. C-Bell winning the race, of course, is the best race. Carson Hocevar finishing in second place. Kyle Larson at a super speedway finishing third, so he kind of shook off all that stuff that's apparently, quote-unquote, in his head about driving at super speedways. Wasn't without controversy, and we're going to get to that in just a minute. Just for you, Quattro, I'm going to talk about it. Ryan Blaney finishing in fourth there. Once again, Ryan Blaney wrecks and gets like a top 10, so this is beginning to be a trend with Ryan Blaney. Even though he wrecks, he's still having a good run. Is he going to be the yin to Joey Logano's yang? Is he going to be good in odd years and Joey Logano is going to be good in even years? Interesting thing to keep track of there. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. finishing in fifth. Denny Hamlin in sixth place. Kyle Busch finishing in seventh. Ross Chastain up front a lot of portion of the day, but he ends up in eighth place there. Probably not the finish he wanted for how long he was running up front. Bubba Wallace with a good finish and a sharp-looking Columbia number 23 Toyota for 23.11 in ninth there. And John Hunter Nemechek finishing in 10th place. So the Legacy Motor Club story getting interesting here. They're starting to turn it around, so good race for all those guys. Now on to bad race. Got to say bad race for Austin Cindric. Had a super good car, drove a super good race, but then Kyle Larson throws a block on him toward the end of the race. He gets into the wall and almost the same time he gets into the wall, William Byron pushes up, who I'm also going to give a bad race to, because both of those guys had really good cars, had really good runs going. But that block from Larson set in motion a chain of events, and the 24 and the 2 kind of took themselves out there. So going to give them a bad race. Also bad race for the 6 car. He never got going. Not even anything he could do about it. Not his fault. But he was part of that Chase Elliott wreck with when Ricky Stenhouse Jr. checked up or whatever, and Chase Elliott got in the wall. It ended up the accordion effect. The 6 car got the worst of it. So those were probably the worst races for me out of it. And once again, not necessarily anything those guys did wasn't their fault, because they had fast cars. Just didn't work out for them. That's super speedway racing. All right, that's all I got for you on this one. If you made it this far, would love to have your subscription. If not, I'll just keep making these things. If you're already subscribed, you know I appreciate you all as well. And other than that, hope your Monday didn't suck. Peace.